Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Can You Hear Me podcast. I'm Rob Johnson, president of Rob Johnson Communications.
And I'm Eileen Rochford, CEO of the Harbinger Group, a marketing and strategy firm. We spend more than our fair share of time on this show talking about effective communication as a core leadership skill. For those who are natural leaders, it may seem second nature, but honestly, it's not.
That is very true, Eileen. No matter what kind of leader you are, introvert or extrovert, being what our guest today calls fearless leadership, being a fearless leader requires effort and introspection. So today we will explore the habits and real life experiences that help people step into fearless leadership, even if at first it doesn't feel natural quite yet.
And we have enlisted the help of the perfect expert for this discussion. Her name is Anna Bleers. She is a longtime agency veteran who recently founded her own firm called Fearless Strategic Marketing. And today we are going to dive into how to become a fearless leader. Anna, welcome. Thanks for being here with us today.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here with you, Eileen and Rob.
Well, we're so excited because we talk a lot about marketing, we talk a lot about communication, but this is a topic that we haven't really touched on before, and I'm really excited to get into it. But before we begin discussing this meaty subject, Anna, why don't you give our listeners your background, your origin story?
Sure. Well, I spent the first almost 30 years of my career working in advertising. I spent the first almost 9 years at Leo Burnett. I started off, I was a graduate of Marquette University. I went to Marquette with Eileen. That's how I met Eileen. And I was a communications and English major. And I was a communications major that doesn't exist anymore, but it was a kind of a sample major where I had a little bit of advertising, a little bit of journalism, a little bit of PR, a little bit of broadcast, which was great for people who didn't know what they wanted to do. But it didn't really push you in any direction. And I had some amazing mentors, a family that I used to babysit for, and they had their own agency called Powers Advertising. And they gave me a great opportunity right out of school. And I started working with them. And I always tell young people when I work with them, you know, grab any opportunity that comes your way. And it was a great opportunity. And that's where I learned all about advertising. And they showed me the ropes. It was a small agency. I got to learn everything. And that's where I got my start. And I learned also how to network, and I went to every single networking opportunity there was. And I always again tell young people that was when networking was handing business cards and following up with phone calls and in-person meetings. And through that I got my first opportunity at Leo Burnett, and started off on the Procter Gamble account and spent 9 years there, and learned a tremendous amount. And then from there went to Energy BBDO, and at Energy BBDO, which was the Chicago offering of BBDO, which was part of BBDO Worldwide, and part of the Omnicom global marketing agency. I worked on everything from global businesses like, Mars, Bayer Consumer Care, PepsiCo on both the food and the beverage side, to startup businesses like Kind Snacks and Kerrygold, and help them grow. And I worked on food and beverage, retail, fashion, beauty, insurance, you name it, and I worked on it. But the agency world was changing and evolving, and it's still changing really rapidly today. And in 2024, with all those changes, I made the decision to separate from BBDO, and had to figure out what was next. And that's when Fearless Strategic Marketing was born. I discovered the world of fractional marketing, and I was able to use my skills as a client leader and apply them to my own business. And I decided that, it would be a chance for me to be an entrepreneur, and build my own business. And I like to say that I help my clients outsmart versus outspend their competition. And when I thought about all the experiences I had, I loved working with what I call challenger brands, which are brands whose ambitions are greater than their competitors. And that's where, smarting versus outspending comes into play. And so I help them build bold marketing strategies, leveraging brand that is built around what matters to consumers. And that's the critical part. A big mistake a lot of brands make is thinking only about the brand versus what matters to consumers and being really thoughtful about what's important to them in their lives. And that's what I do with my brands that I work on today.
Fantastic. Excellent introduction. Thank you. Okay. And I love the plug for Marquette. You're the best. Way to go.
Never miss an opportunity for that one.
Never.
I know. You should have placed
Has Marquette reached out yet, Eileen, to you and like thank you for promoting us on almost every podcast?
Sponsor or something? I know. Okay. So we are here to talk about, and that you have inspired this entire conversation. So we're here to talk about how to become a fearless leader. Let's get a little bit of context first before we really just jump in the deep end. Can you tell us, what does this concept of fearlessness mean to you personally? And why do you want to be fearless? Why should anybody want to be fearless? Let's kind of get that whole background laid before we get into the how do you become one?
Yeah. Well, when I was thinking a lot about building my own company. And again, I'm a brand person through and through. I took an approach that I would take with my own clients as I was building my own brand. So of course I did, a competitive audit. So I went out there on LinkedIn and I started looking at everyone out there who was a brand consultant and working in marketing and a fractional leader. And I had an immediate observation. Wow, there were a lot of companies out there and a lot of individuals out there that looked exactly alike. And so immediately I thought, wow, I have to build a very distinctive brand. And then the other observation that I had when I was reflecting on my own experiences working with clients is that, one of the biggest frustrations I had were clients who were making decisions. And I thought a lot about why weren't they making decisions? What were holding them back? And, when I was thinking and replaying those meetings over and over, I had this aha epiphany moment that it was really fear. And it was one of those things that it was the elephant in the room that no one was talking about. What they were saying is that, it was budgets, or we weren't having the right people in the room, or maybe the creative concept wasn't right, or let's rethink the strategy. But the reality was it was fear that was holding people back. And I'm a data person, right? So, I first thought, well, is this a theory or is this reality? So I started doing a lot of research. And then the more research that I did, the more I found that this was actually a reality. This wasn't a theory. There was a lot of data that was done, and there's been a lot of research that has gone into that has proved that fear is actually what holds people back. Fear gets in the way of creativity. Fear gets in the way of innovation. The World Health Organization actually studied this, and they found that fear, depression, and anxiety cost the global economy an estimated $1 trillion a year in lost productivity. And so I was like, wow, I'm actually onto something. And so, I decided, wow, this is actually something sticky. This is something I could actually help clients with. And this is number one, the thing that gets in the way of creativity, innovation, and business decisions. And so I decided this is what I was going to be focusing on, especially if, I knew bold strategy is what works and builds brands. And so I decided fearless is what it was going to be, because I know fearless was what works. And then what I didn't realize at the time is that it was also going to be something that was going to hold myself accountable. Because, when you name your own company fearless, you've got to be fearless, which I didn't realize at the time that, it was
You
going
got
to
to
make
walk that walk every
me,
day, don't you?
exactly, it was going to make me fearless. And there's a lot of moments that I have really every single day when, I don't want to wake up and I don't want to be fearless, or I have a moment where someone tells me no, or I have a failure. And, when you are calling yourself fearless, then you do have to hold yourself accountable and you do have to act fearless. And it's made me better, and it's made me more strategic, and it's made me more fearless. So, it holds myself accountable, and it makes me hold my clients accountable.
That's good.
It was both inspired and perhaps a subconscious decision.
Yeah, exactly.
You wanted that accountability.
Exactly.
And you got it. And you got it. Well, so let's put this in the context of business, Anna. How does being a fearless leader apply to companies and organizations where you aptly pointed out a minute ago that people just sometimes don't make those decisions and waste, millions and billions and trillions of dollars on that indecision? What does it mean?
What does it mean to act like
Companies
a
and
fearless leader?
organizations.
Yeah. Well, number one, you need to build courage through action and behavior. It's really important to walk that walk, as we were just talking about. And so you have to actually, every single day, make decisions that are fearless. And you have to make sure your behavior is fearless. And you also have to communicate that direction. So it's not enough just to do it behind closed doors, but you also have to communicate those decisions out to the organization. You have to trust your instincts and use your voice. And that means you're navigating self-doubt. We all have that inner critic inside, that inner voice that's kind of telling us, it's not real, that self-doubt. But you have to find that inner confidence and that inner voice and overcome that self-doubt, and learn how to, over-edit yourself and overcome and listen to your confidence and make those decisions. Mm-hmm. You have to let go of playing it safe, and lean into some risk. Playing it safe is actually the riskiest thing that you can do. When you play it safe, you're doing exactly what's been done before. And especially when it comes to marketing, that's just not good enough. You're being held to results, and we're in a landscape that is changing and evolving every day. When you're trying to drive growth, doing the same thing that's been done before isn't driving growth. So you have to evolve, you have to change, and you have to innovate. And that often means doing something that hasn't been done before, that's pushing yourself, and that's evolving. And so, yes, that means some risk and innovation. You have to lead with authenticity. You have to communicate like a real human. I always say, don't talk with marketing speak, because that's not how real human beings talk. In other categories, a lot of times people start talking with a lot of technical jargon. I remember in one of my first meetings with Procter Gamble, people were using so many acronyms. I was like, I don't even know what's going on here. It evolves into a completely different language, right? So how can you connect and communicate at like a human level, right? And that's how you can actually create relationships and have a human presence with one another. You need to set boundaries with clear expectations, right? Protect energy and have honest conversations early and throughout the process. And that's how you can keep resentment from festering in or burnout from setting in. You have to allow your behavior to inspire boldness in others, and then create that amongst the team and then in the wider team itself.
Anna, is this
unique.
a top down? Is this top down? Is this solely the responsibility of the CEO, or is it anybody in the C-suite? And how do you how do you manage that? So you may be looking for your overall leader to be setting strategy, and they may be paralyzed by fear. But what could you do as somebody who's having those meetings and those discussions about kind of breaking that chain of that's probably doesn't have a simple answer, but I was just thinking about it from a is it really one person going top down, or is it everybody that sits up there in the leadership roles? Is it incumbent upon all of them?
It's incumbent upon everybody. It can't just be top down. You need to spread it throughout the entire organization. The top has the most influence, and they have the ability to spread it more quickly than everybody. And if it doesn't start with the top, it won't spread. But it's an incumbent on everybody in the organization. And so, if you start at the top, then it will spread, but you need all of the layers to tackle it on and to behave in this way for it to spread throughout the entire organization itself.
Mm-hmm.
And you want it to be behavior which everyone takes on. And you want it to be part of the organizational values. It can't just live within one person. It's got to be part of how the organization behaves.
Totally makes sense. So, are there other significant themes attached to fearless leadership that you'd like to bring into the conversation, Anna? Just curious if there's a couple other things you want to toss in here into the mix before we really get into it.
Well, I mean, I think there's ways to become a fearless leader, but it's also you have to recognize when people are behaving in fear-based ways.
Yeah.
Because when that behavior exists, you have to recognize that behavior and talk about that behavior and find a way to address that behavior. Mm-hmm. Because there's, acting in a fearless way and getting that to spread and build within the organization. But there's also identifying the fear-based behaviors, discussing it, and trying to stop those behaviors, which is equally important.
Because you have to understand it before you can change.
Yes, exactly. Because when people are behaving in fear-based ways, that can create huge problems and stopgaps.
It's probably true that people don't really understand that that's what's holding them back or kind of constricting, their ability to make their decisions. Fear is a very difficult thing to identify unless it's, there's a tiger about to pounce on you. Then that's fear. Like, that's pretty obvious, right? But in a business context, you probably don't know, because a lot of us put on kind of our, powerful leader face when we walk into work, right? And there's this persona that you're supposed to embody in the workplace that many people, still try to do. And it's natural. But that being the case, what does fear in the workplace kind of look like that to help people start to identify, oh gosh, maybe that's really what it is, and I should take a step back and be more honest with myself?
Absolutely right. And Eileen, I want to go back to something that you said, because there are two types of fear. There is the, fight or flight fear. Okay. That comes from your amygdala or your reptilian part of the brain, right? That is your fight or flight. And that is what keeps us alive. And that is all about survival. And that is ingrained in us and is critical, right, for our survival. And that's part of why we're all alive here. Okay. And then there is the socialized fear that has been taught in us, right? And that is all about, again, socialization and experiences. And those are fears that are reactionary based. And those are fears that you can control and overcome. And those are also fears that can um, control us and become greater than us and take the driver's seat. And those are the fears that we're talking about. Okay.
So give us some examples of these socialized fears. I get where you're going, but I really want to understand it fully.
Yeah. So fight or flight is a reaction to life or death situations. So a tiger, exactly. You immediately react and there's nothing you can do about that. Okay. Where socialization is fear over maybe you see something on the ground and you're not sure what it is, and everybody has a different reaction to that. That's a socialized fear, and someone can say, oh, that's actually nothing to be afraid of. That's just a little spot on the wall. You might think it's a snake, but it's really not. It's just a little dot. And see, if you come a little closer and you touch it, look, it's just a little squiggly line. It's not a fear. See, there's nothing to react to. And you can be talked through it and talked out of it. And you can see that that's a socialized fear versus a tiger is coming at you. It has fangs. It's going to rip you apart. And you have 2 seconds to get out of there or you will
not true. Yeah.
Right. So those are the two different kinds of fear. Okay. So what are behaviors when people are behaving in a fear-based way, especially in a work setting? Number one, hesitation in decision-making. We talked about that even earlier.
Yeah.
And, one of the things too that gets in the way is that people often don't say what's really going on. People mask the behavior. So they call it other things. So they may not make the decision, but they don't say why they're not making the decision. They will say it's for other reasons. Constant second guessing. So, or just complete perfectionism. So we're not going to make a decision because, or we will make a decision when it becomes perfect, but it will never be perfect and it will never get there. So the decision will never be made. Avoidance. So we'll never get all the people in the meeting, or avoidance of change. We are never going to do this if it's not exactly the way it was, or avoidance of innovation, which you can see, especially with marketing or creativity, how that can be a huge problem.
Yep.
Completely reactive leadership versus proactive leadership. Unclear speech, vague speech, or avoiding key or important topics. So those are some of the telltale signs of fear-based behaviors. But you can see how all of those get in the way of leadership and decision-making and change.
So, you've clearly identified these fears, what they are.
And much of this is based off of research too, I want to add. So it's,
But so identifying them is one thing, and you may be sitting here rattling them off, and everybody says, people listening say, oh yeah, that I've seen that before. I've experienced that before. How do you put aside those fear-based behaviors that you've so eloquently told us about to overcome it? How do you get over that hump, as it were?
Yes. So there are some great tools on how to stop those behaviors and move forward in a very productive way, because that's a key thing, right? Everyone has outcomes they're trying to achieve and decisions they're trying to make. So one option is, first, be clear, specific, and direct. Try to pinpoint the conversation to a specific goal. Have an open dialogue and really listen to what they're trying to say. A lot of times people have a fear of not being listened to and feel like their point is not being communicated. So if you clearly listen to them and let them articulate, you may be able to get into a productive dialogue with them. diffuse and don't judge them. And then often you can get into a productive dialogue.
Tell me more about diffuse. What's a good example of how to diffuse?
So a lot of times people will feel like there's just a reaction being, so their opinion is being met with an immediate reaction versus you're diffusing, not reacting, and getting into a discussion. So they're not being immediately judged. You're getting into a discussion.
Yeah, that the urge to react is so strong, isn't it? So,
yes.
So kind of converting that into a
productive dialogue.
Yeah, a receiving, like as you've stressed, and everybody knows you should all be doing a hell of a lot more listening. There's no doubt about it.
Exactly. So you're like receiving, you're listening, and you're allowing it to kind of all come down.
You know, I was thinking
into calmness.
Yeah, I was thinking about this subject, Anna. You know, when I knew we were going to be talking about it on the podcast, and I thought to myself, have I had fear? What kind of fear have I had? And then I realized maybe early on in the entrepreneurial journey, and as I talk to a lot of other young or aspiring or new entrepreneurs, and they say, fake it till you make it. I feel like there's a little bit sometimes of an imposter syndrome before you've really gotten in and have done that work in a deep kind of way. How do you overcome that and just say to yourself, I am good enough. I am the right person at the right time for this job. How do you do that?
Well, I think, it's okay to not know all the answers. No one is expecting you to know all the answers. So, number one, I think it's be okay with what you know, be okay with who you are. I think the minute you start clinging to, oh my gosh, I've got to know everything, or are they going to find me out? That's when you start getting into defensive mode, right? That's when you get into imposter mode. And that's when you start getting into that fear-based reactionary behavior, where then you're defensive and you're afraid of people finding me out versus, hey, you know what? I'm okay with what I know, and I'm okay with what I don't know. And I'm here to bring and have a good conversation. And, it's okay with what I don't know. I'll find out those answers, or we'll work together and we'll figure out a solution. But that's a very different way to enter in a conversation with, okay, I'm going to come in with what I know. And what if they find out what I don't know? I'm ruined, right? You're like coming in then with a very, right. But then you're coming in with a sense of calmness, and a sense of safeness versus a sense of, I'm coming in and, oh my gosh, I don't want them to find me out, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just a very different emotional space.
It totally is. One thing I used to do, because I know you guys are, well, you're totally new at being, a consultant entrepreneur. Anna, Rob, you're not that new, but
I'm still, not anymore.
Not anymore.
But when I was, somebody was looking out for me. Thank you, Aileen.
You're very sweet. It was, 23 years ago, I think, when I started this organization. I was really young. And I also had like a face that looked even younger than I actually was. So those things didn't always help, for credibility when I was typically in boardrooms. And so I would make myself say, because I had a lot of fear and a lot of anxiousness, and, like my family's, livelihood was on the line, literally. So I would make myself say, what are you afraid of, Eileen? Like in the mirror before I would go, or like, days ahead when I was preparing for a big presentation, I would say, what are you afraid of? I'm afraid I'm going to forget where I am in my presentation. What are you going to do about if that happens? See what I'm saying? It was a great exercise. And
yeah,
I don't have to do it as much anymore, but I still do have to do it occasionally.
Yeah.
And so maybe that's something that people could do, to just name it, name it, claim it, as they say. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that was going to be my next point, is like just creating an environment of safety and calm, and by doing that, you can bring down the fear in the other person. Yeah. And it is really powerful to say, like, it's okay to not know, or it's okay to feel fear.
Yeah.
And I mean, I used to say that in creative meetings a lot of times to my clients, like, it's okay because it's okay to feel scared. It's okay to feel fear. It's our job to bring creative ideas that no one's ever seen before. That means it's a really powerful idea.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Uncomfortableness is part of the creative process.
Exactly. And that means we're doing our job.
Leaving that comfort zone for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very good.
Another path is, being okay with moving forward without an agreement. Sometimes it's okay to agree to disagree and tabling for the next meeting. Sometimes it's just okay to sit without an agreement and say, let's just say, we're going to sit with this for now and come back to this in the next discussion.
Don't rush it. Yeah.
Don't rush it. Exactly. Also talk to everyone about, committing to constructive behavior. If you're seeing that we're divulging in deconstructive behavior, kind of giving everyone a bit of a grown-up timeout and saying, hey, we're going to stop the conversation right now because we're going into not constructive behavior. And then let's just stop the conversation and let's all agree that we're going to come back together and have a follow-through discussion. And people can sit and again, sit on the discussion. And then I'm going to borrow something from Mel Robbins that I think is really powerful because, again, when emotions are heightened, that's where fear takes over. And she has something called the 5-second rule, which is you stop, you talk backwards from 5, and you then stop allowing emotion or fear to take over. And just by the simple act of just stopping and counting to 5, you can allow like rational thought versus fear to take over. And it's like, again, giving yourself a little bit of a timeout. And then coming back to the conversation.
And interrupting, the kind of pathways of your brain for a minute is
exactly
really important too, because you can get entrenched in that pretty quick. The brain likes it. Yeah.
Exactly.
These are such good reminders.
These are great reminders. And that final point was really important too. I mean, the adult timeout, we could all use it. Anna Bleers, founder of Fearless Strategic Marketing. We thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on. It was so much fun speaking with both of you, Rob and Eileen. This was such a pleasure. I really appreciate it.
Well, this is something that we, as I said earlier, we haven't tackled before. So this is, it's just fascinating to hear you talk about it. And to have built your whole agency, your own agency around fearless. It's wonderful.
Yep. Fearlessness. I love it. We've given us some awesome food for thought. And I'm sure there's more we could dig into in the future if you'd like to come back.
Oh, I would love to. Thank you both so much.
We would love to have you.
Yes, we would. Yes, we would.
Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Can You Hear Me? I'm Rob Johnson. If you'd like to comment on the podcast or suggest a topic, please contact us at our Can You Hear Me podcast page or subscribe to the Can You Hear Me newsletter. Both can be found on LinkedIn.
Thanks, everybody. I'm Eileen Rochford. If you liked what you heard today on Can You Hear Me, please consider giving our show one of your reviews on whatever platform you utilize for your podcast, like Apple, Spotify, and the like, because your reviews help other listeners find us. And that's really what we want to do. We want to reach as many people as we can. So thank you for considering that. And I have a really exciting closing remark that I don't think we've mentioned before.
We have not.
There is one more place that you can check out more great information from guests like Anna and many of our former guests, and a little bit from me and Rob too, that goes outside of what you hear on the podcast. We have a brand new website. So Can You Hear Me pod and we'll put the address, of course, in the show notes. But it's a brand new website. We're really excited about it.
Very excited.
Yeah, so another, step forward for the Can You Hear Me fun that we do here on
Another
the show.
way to engage.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Okay, guys, thanks very much. Until next time.